Long before the world learned to hurry, there were those who learned to listen. They watched rivers instead of clocks. They trusted silence more than noise. And they understood something we have forgotten, that life does not move forward by force, but by flow. This is not a series about answers. It is a series about remembering. The words you will hear come from minds like Lao Tzu, but the path they point to has always been your own. Slow your breath. Release the need to arrive. You are already on the way. What if the reason life feels heavy is because you're pushing against it? 2,000 years ago, Lao Tzu warned us about force, ambition, and resistance. What he understood then may be exactly what we need now. There is a moment, just before the water moves, when it is perfectly still. It does not hesitate. It does not decide. It does not prepare. And yet, nothing escapes it. 2,000 years ago, Lao Tzu looked at this stillness and saw something most people miss. He called it Wu Wei. We live in a world that worships effort. Do more, try harder, push further, fix yourself. From the moment we wake, we are taught that progress requires pressure, that without force, nothing happens. But if effort alone created harmony, the world would already be at peace. Instead, we are exhausted, overworked, training against lives that feel heavy, tight, and resistant. Lao Tzu noticed this long ago. He saw that most human suffering does not come from inactivity, but from unnatural effort. The boatman who stopped rowing. At the edge of a wide river stood a village that lived by its crossing. Every morning, people gathered at the bank, merchants, farmers, travelers, each eager to reach the other side. And every morning, the same boatman waited beside his narrow wooden boat. He was old, quiet, and never in a hurry. What puzzled the villagers was how little he seemed to do. While younger boatmen strained at their oars, shouting at the current and cursing the wind, this one often paused. He would sit still, eyes half closed, hands resting loosely on the wood. Sometimes, he did not row at all. Lazy, they whispered. Careless, others said. Dangerous, warned those who feared the river. Yet somehow, his boat always arrived. One day, a young merchant, impatient and proud, refused to wait. He chose a stronger boatman, one who promised speed. The man rowed fiercely, muscles tight, jaw clenched. The river resisted. Waves struck the hull. The boat drifted off course, spun, and scraped against hidden stone. By the time they reached the far bank, the merchant was shaken, soaked, and late. The next day, reluctantly, the merchant chose the quiet old boatman. As they pushed off, the merchant watched closely. The old man did not fight the current. He angled the boat slightly, letting the river carry them diagonally downstream. Only then did he row, slowly, gently, just enough to guide, never enough to struggle. Why don't you row harder? The merchant asked. The boatman smiled. Why would I argue with water? They reached the far bank sooner than the merchant expected. Dry, calm, on time. Over the following weeks, people noticed something else. When storms came, the old boatman cancelled crossings, not out of fear, but understanding. When the river was gentle, he moved swiftly with little effort. He never forced a crossing that didn't want to happen. Eventually, the villagers began to watch him more closely. They noticed how his movements were small but precise. How his stillness was not empty, but attentive. How he acted only when the moment opened, and never before. One evening, a child asked him, "How do you always know what to do?" The boatman looked at the river as it darkened into night. "I don't," he said. "I know when not to." Years later, when the old boatman was gone, the village remembered his lesson. They built better boats. They studied the river's bends. They learned to wait for the right moment instead of demanding it. And the crossings became easier. Not because people tried harder, but because they finally stopped fighting what was already carrying them. Sometimes, the wisest action is not more effort. It is listening long enough to realize you are already moving in the right direction. Wu Wei does not mean laziness. It does not mean apathy. And it does not mean doing nothing at all. Wu Wei means not forcing. It is action without struggle. Movement without friction. Doing what is required, and nothing more. Imagine a door. One person pushes with all their strength. The other simply turns the handle. Both act. Only one resists reality. Wu Wei is knowing which action fits the moment. Nature as the teacher. Lao Tzu never explained Wu Wei through rules. He explained it through nature. Water does not argue with rocks. It flows around them. Trees do not rush to grow. They expand at the speed life allows. The valley does not compete with the mountain, yet everything flows toward it. Wu Wei is not passivity. It is intelligence without ego. When action aligns with the natural order, effort disappears. Why forcing fails? The harder we force outcomes, the more resistance we create. Force tightens the mind. It narrows vision. It blinds us to better paths. Wu Wei invites patience, not waiting out of fear, but waiting with awareness. It is knowing when to act and when action would only interfere. Most mistakes are not caused by inaction. They are caused by acting too soon. Doing nothing, accomplishing everything. There is a stillness that exists just before movement begins. A pause so subtle it often goes unnoticed. The river has not yet shifted. The wind has not yet spoken. And yet, everything is already in motion. It was this stillness that Lao Tzu observed when the world around him rushed forward without looking back. While others measured success by speed, strength, and conquest, he watched what did not hurry. He listened to what did not announce itself. And in doing so, he uncovered a truth that quietly contradicted everything people believed about effort and achievement. Human beings, he noticed, were always pushing against time, against one another, against themselves. They believed that without force, nothing could be accomplished. That without strain, life would stagnate. So they tightened their grip on the world, unaware that the tension they felt was not caused by life itself, but by their resistance to it. Lao Tzu did not call this struggle necessary. He called it unnecessary. He spoke instead of Wu Wei, a phrase often translated as doing nothing, yet meaning something far more subtle. Wu Wei is not the absence of action, but the absence of force. It is action that does not fight the moment it belongs to. It is movement that does not argue with reality. To understand this, Lao Tzu never turned to theory. He turned to nature. Water does not plan its path. It does not push against stone in anger. It yields, curves, waits, and in time, reshapes mountains. The valley does not climb upward to prove its worth, yet all rivers find their way to it. Trees do not strain to grow faster than the seasons allow, and still, they rise. Nothing in nature forces itself into becoming. And yet, everything becomes. The tragedy of human effort, Lao Tzu believed, is not that people act, but that they act out of alignment. They move before the moment is ready. They push where patience would open a door. They mistake urgency for importance, tension for strength. Force creates friction. Friction creates exhaustion. And exhaustion blinds us to easier paths. Wu Wei is the intelligence to recognize when action would interfere rather than help. It is knowing that sometimes the most effective choice is restraint, not because one is afraid to act, but because one understands the rhythm of things. A door does not open when pushed harder. It opens when the handle is turned. Most people never notice the handle. They only feel the resistance and assume more effort is required. Lao Tzu saw that resistance itself is often the message. In life, this shows itself everywhere. In work, when productivity is forced beyond clarity and purpose, effort multiplies while meaning disappears. In relationships, when control replaces trust, connection dissolves. In the mind, when thoughts are wrestled into silence, they grow louder instead. You cannot calm water by striking it. You cannot quiet the mind by commanding it. You cannot force harmony into existence. Wu Wei teaches patience without passivity, presence without control. It is the courage to allow life to respond instead of insisting it obey. This does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means acting only when action belongs. It means waiting not in fear, but in awareness. Most mistakes are not born from inaction, they are born from acting too soon. Lao Tzu understood something deeply unsettling to the restless mind. The universe does not require constant interference. It functions with or without our anxiety. Seasons turn, rivers flow, life unfolds. When effort becomes natural, it no longer feels heavy. When action aligns with the moment, struggle dissolves. What remains is movement that feels inevitable rather than forced. The sage, Lao Tzu said, does not compete with the path. He walks where it opens. He does not hurry the river. He arrives with it. Perhaps doing nothing is not about stopping at all. Perhaps it is about finally stepping aside and allowing life to move as it always has. The way does not rush. Yet nothing is left undone. Wu Wei in modern life. Wu Wei applies everywhere. In work, stop pushing productivity beyond clarity. In relationships, stop trying to control outcomes you cannot command. In thought, stop wrestling with the mind, let it settle on its own. You do not calm water by stirring it. You calm it by leaving it alone. This is not surrender. It is trust. The gardener and the stone. In a quiet village bordered by hills, there lived a gardener known for the stillness of his hands. His garden was not the largest, nor the most carefully arranged. Paths curved where they wished. Flowers grew unevenly. Some seasons were generous, others sparse. Yet travelers often stopped to sit near the gate, sensing a calm they could not name. One year, a large stone surfaced in the middle of the garden. It had not been there before, or perhaps it always had, hidden beneath the soil. Rain uncovered it, inch by inch, until it blocked the central path. Neighbors urged the gardener to remove it. Dig it out, one said. Break it apart, said another. Your garden will never be right while it's there. The gardener nodded, thanked them, and did nothing. Days passed, then weeks. The stone remained. People grew impatient. Some believed the gardener had grown old and careless. Others thought he had lost his will. But each morning, the gardener came as he always had. He watered what needed water. He trimmed what grew too wild. He watched the sun and the wind. He never struck the stone. When autumn arrived, vines began creeping over its surface. Moss followed. Rainwater collected at its base. The stone, once an obstacle, became cool and shaded. The gardener adjusted the path, not to avoid the stone, but to move with it. The curve slowed walkers. They lingered. They noticed the scent of earth, the sound of insects, the quiet between footsteps. One day, a child asked, "Why didn't you remove the stone?" The gardener smiled and pressed his hand gently against it. "If I had rushed," he said, "I would have worked against the garden. I wanted to see what the garden would do first." Years later, the stone cracked, not from force, but from weather. Roots found their way inside. One spring morning, it split enough to cradle a small pool of water. Birds came. Flowers grew beside it, fed by moisture the soil had never held before. What once blocked the path became the heart of the garden. The villagers finally understood. The gardener had not been inactive. He had been attentive. He had not avoided action. He had waited for the right one. Some things do not respond to effort. They respond to time, alignment, and restraint. And sometimes, the moment you stop forcing life to move, life begins to move for you. Quiet truth. Lao Tzu understood something deeply uncomfortable for modern minds. The universe does not need your anxiety to function. Life unfolds whether you strain or not. Wu Wei is the courage to step back and allow life to meet you halfway. When effort becomes natural, nothing feels heavy. The sage does not force the path. He walks where it opens. The river does not hurry, yet it arrives. Perhaps doing nothing is not about stopping, but about finally getting out of the way. The way does not end here. It continues, quietly.